So today we are going to talk about getting your kids ready for test prep. If you are like me, we are now in the month of March while I'm currently filming this video, and I like to get a jump start for my test prep. We test normally at the beginning of June or in June. And I can say that because we do a year-round homeschool, that's when we choose to test. In the state of North Carolina, we have to test once a year. So as long as we do that, we're within compliance. But maybe your state doesn't cause you to test, or maybe you just want to see where your children are at. But if you are state mandated to test your children, getting a jump start on some of the things that maybe you don't teach them all throughout the year, like how to use Scantron sheets or all of those things. Basically, we're getting them ready for test prep, and that is what we are going to be talking about in this video. Come along and let's talk about it. From Learning to Love Well, and if you are new to this channel, this is a channel about homeschool from a biblical worldview. We talk about everything from the practical, which today is definitely going to be the practical, biblical encouragement, just anything that encompasses homeschool from a biblical lens. So today we are going to be talking about test prep, what we use, things that we have found helpful, and why we should even test prep. I'm actually going to start with the latter. So with why we test prep. We test prep because of the fact that my kids are not hammer drilled for facts to learn how to test well. I do not teach test taking skills all throughout their homeschool year. I teach them things like history, geography, science, the actual subjects, but then we don't really start working on test prep until we're coming up on their yearly exam. I do this because I'm not crazy about the idea of teaching my kids to learn so they can test well. I want my children to learn freely. I want them to enjoy learning. We're currently reading a book called Men of God, Men of Science, and so many of these scientists believed that it was the glory of God to conceal things and the glory of kings to search them out. And we've read about Galileo and how he was inspired by that verse to pursue science, and we have learned about how just learning in general, studying things, can even be considered stewardship by some scientists. And it's very fascinating to look at it that way, that they thought stewarding what they were given well was looking in to the things that God has created and giving him glory for it. So I think that's really cool. So I want to teach my children a lot of things that maybe they don't test for throughout the year. If you are like me, we are in a state that mandates state testing. So a good way to figure out if your state requires state testing is to go to HSLDA, which is the Homeschool League, School League Defense Association, I think. And you can type in your state, and during that time you will pop it up and you can see all of the requirements for your state. And if you are not required to state test, then you can do this as an option, or you can do this as or you don't have to test at all. Even though my state requires it, I actually do like seeing where my kids improved or didn't improve from the previous year to know what we need to work on or really hone skills on. I think it actually is a really good tool. The only thing is that it is given in a different format than we typically test throughout the year. So a lot of our tests are open answers. In mathematics, they're not picking from 4 multiple choice questions throughout the year. They're open-ended questions. They are short answer questions, or there are a couple of tests and quizzes that they take that are multiple choice, like Elements of Faith, which we just finished. But most of the time, that's just not the case. Most of the time, they have very limited multiple choice answers. So for that, we do actually bring in extra resources to teach them. Also, my kids, obviously, I grade my kids' papers, so we don't use Scantrons. Most of the tests that you can get, because they're automated grading, are going to be on Scantron bubble sheets. So during this time, we're going to start test taking and teaching things like how to fill in the bubble all the way, or how to pick the best answer if you are confused between 2 answers or eliminating 1 answer. your basic test taking skills. Because again, that's not how I train my kids. Also, when you are going into test taking skill drills, if you are like me, I don't actually time my kids on everything. Now, I do multiplication timing, we've done speedy reader timing, and sometimes I will elect in their book to do speed reading comprehension, but most of the time I don't. So I'm going to pop up a little thing on the screen that shows you what I buy for my children. I buy them comprehension workbooks from Abeka towards the end of the year. So Lord willing, I'm going to put in an order here soon for some comprehension readers. And I think this year I'm going to make a bubble sheet on Canva so they can actually answer on the bubble sheet on Canva so that they can have a basis for filling out that Scantron sheet so that they're not going to make as many mistakes. Because part of automated grading, unfortunately, isn't you not having someone actually grade to make sure that you're doing it. It's going through a big computer, and if you get some of the marks wrong or you have stray marks or things like that, then it could get it wrong. So because of that, one of the things that we do is, again, start talking about test taking skills. I get the comprehension books from Abeka so that my children have the opportunity to start timing themselves, answering the best questions, selecting the best questions, and answering questions like maybe they wouldn't normally answer, like what would be the best title for this passage? It's not necessarily a question that comes up in your normal study of like grammar and things like that. Those are definitely more questions that are geared toward inferencing about a passage and things like that. And although they do that with like book reports where they describe things and they summarize it and all of those things, it's just not something that we do very commonly. It is definitely more like a test-taking style format kind of question. And so for that, the Abeka comprehension sheets are really, really good. They have all of those questions. They even have questions that could be kind of tricky, and they even have passages that are written that if not carefully read, they will get them wrong. And so it kind of fine-tunes my children's ability to test take and develop those test-taking comprehension skills at a deeper level so that on test-taking week, they're not stressing because they are introduced to all the new things. If you don't think that's enough, there is BJU. You can get on the BJU, I think it's Press or Homeschool site, where you can go ahead and start looking at practice tests. I think the Iowa 10 test and the SAT 10 test has booklets that you can purchase for test prep where they give like sample testing that you can administer to your child if you are worried and they've never taken one before and you are concerned that they are just not going to be able to understand what they're doing. So you do have that option. If you are interested in that, I can put the link so that you can or links below in the video description so that you can look through it and see that that is something you want to do. Well, today is a short and sweet video, but if you are about to test, I highly recommend going ahead and stopping, taking a few minutes, pray about the decision that you're about to make, and start looking into test prep materials, especially if you're about to test your kids. It really gives them the leg up, it builds their confidence for the test, and it doesn't make those days seem so scary. All right, well, have a great day, God bless, and good night.